For centuries, we believed the Vikings survived the cold through sheer strength, but archaeology has just revealed something no one expected. In Borg and Hedeby, excavations uncovered floors and stones designed to hold heat for hours after the fire died. They weren't savages, they were engineers of ice. Today, you'll discover 7 real systems that turned winter into their greatest weapon, and one of them is still used in your home. Stay until the end to find out which. Chapter 1. The Breathing Floor. Beneath the Viking longhouses, the ground was not dead earth. It was alive, absorbing warmth, exhaling slowly through the night, as if it remembered every winter that had ever passed. In Borg, far north in Norway, and in Hofstadr, Iceland, archaeologists unearthed domestic layers arranged with surgical precision: straw, ash, and clay, one over the other. At first glance, it looked like random debris, but under the microscope of time, it revealed something astonishing: a deliberate pattern of insulation, a prehistoric blueprint for thermal balance. For centuries, historians believed the Vikings survived the cold through brute strength, furs, and faith. But that floor told another story. The straw created tiny chambers that trapped air. The ash absorbed moisture. The clay sealed the whole surface like a natural lid. When the fire in the central hearth died, the warmth didn't vanish. It remained stored beneath their feet for hours. It wasn't sorcery or chance. It was a quiet, empirical science born from observation, adaptation, and fear. The kind of wisdom only those who have stared death in the eyes of a blizzard can acquire. In Hofstadr, archaeologists found something hauntingly human: tiny footprints pressed into still warm clay, fragments of burnt wool clinging to the floor, streaks of animal fat rubbed along the seams to prevent heat loss. Every trace told a story of families learning to outsmart the cold with what little they had. Each home was not just shelter, it was a thermal organism, a living barrier between life and the endless winter. The Vikings understood the ground as a body. When the outer earth froze solid, the clay beneath their soles became its skin, absorbing the heat of fire, then releasing it slowly through the long, polar nights. Modern analysis of ancient floors even shows microscopic fissures caused by repeated heating and cooling, proof that those surfaces had expanded and contracted, breathing with the rhythm of the seasons. Elsewhere in medieval Europe, homes bled warmth through every crack and roof beam. But in the north, the longhouse became a capsule of survival. Its elongated shape captured the low arc of the winter sun. Its narrow openings filtered light but conserved heat, and its thick earthen walls insulated the precious core of family life. Fire wasn't simply a source of light, it was a cycle. Ignite it, retain it, preserve it. Every layer of the house played its part, forming a complex instinctive equation of endurance. Maintenance was sacred ritual. Each autumn, before the sea storms began, families renewed their foundations: new straw, fresh ash, wet clay. The scent of earth mingled with smoke and salt air. Children carried bundles of straw while elders kneaded clay with bare hands, sealing the floor for the coming darkness. When the first snow fell and they stepped on that warm, soft ground, it wasn't comfort, it was triumph. They had trapped the fire beneath their home once again. In Scandinavian museums, modern reconstructions of Viking floors expose a subtle but revolutionary detail. They weren't flat. They curved, almost imperceptibly, creating natural channels where warm air circulated between layers. What might seem an imperfection to modern architects was, in truth, their greatest secret: controlled unevenness that allowed the floor to breathe. Air rose and fell like lungs within the clay, distributing heat evenly through the space. The floor didn't just support life, it generated it. Imagine the sound: wind screaming outside, the ocean freezing in the fjord, and within the longhouse, muffled silence and warmth. The smoke curls upward, the clay radiates faint heat, the scent of ash clings to wool and hair. It was a sensory fortress, built not from wealth or stone, but from ingenuity. Even now, scientists studying thermal efficiency marvel at the precision achieved by these so-called barbarians. Their layered floors acted as natural heat batteries, capable of storing energy without a single tool of modern physics. They weren't warriors of ice, they were engineers of endurance. And when night fell and the fire finally died, the family lay on furs above that warm, breathing floor, feeling the pulse of heat beneath them. the living memory of flame. So the base of their home didn't merely hold them up, it kept them alive. And while the northern wind clawed at their walls, the earth below whispered back its quiet defiance. But what happened when the fire was truly gone and the floor turned to stone-cold silence? The Vikings had an answer, hidden in the rocks that slept beside them. What secret did those stones carry when the night consumed the flame? Chapter 2. Stones that breathe. Fire, the warm hearts of the north. When the fire went out, the heat didn't vanish. It lingered, hidden, breathing softly inside the stones. At the center of every Viking longhouse, the hearth was more than light and flame. It was a machine of survival, a living engine built from rock. The basalt, granite, and sandstone used by the Norse were not chosen at random. They were selected for their density, their strength, and their ability to store warmth long after the fire had died. In the ancient settlements of Hedeby in Germany and Kaupang in Norway, excavations revealed dark circles of scorched stones fractured from thermal stress. At first, researchers assumed they were kitchen remains, but their careful arrangement, some placed deliberately beyond the reach of the flame, told another story. These stones were not cooking tools. They were thermal batteries, primitive and brilliant, built to absorb heat by day and release it through the cold hours of the night. Modern reconstructions in Scandinavian museums have confirmed what the sagas only hinted at. When stones like these were heated for hours inside the hearth, the interior temperature of the longhouse stayed stable well into the night. Even when the fire was reduced to ashes, the house still glowed with warmth. Without knowing the science of heat capacity or conductivity, the Vikings had transformed rock into a vessel of energy. And the innovation didn't stop at home. During winter encampments and long sea voyages, Norse crews carried blocks of heated rock wrapped in damp hides or thick wool. They placed them beneath benches and bedding, creating pockets of radiant heat that lasted for hours. Experimental archaeology has proven that this practice could raise ambient temperatures by several degrees, enough to keep frostbite at bay without burning extra wood. It was portable heat, born of necessity and sharpened by observation. This knowledge became so integrated into their lives that it turned ritualistic. The Icelandic sagas speak of Eldverdur, the guardians of fire, stones that were never discarded, even when cracked, because they were believed to hold the strength of the flame. When a family moved to a new farmstead, they often carried one of these stones with them. It was more than superstition. It was inheritance, the physical memory of warmth passed from one generation to the next. Women were the true keepers of this firecraft. They knew how to turn each stone, how to wrap it in moist skin so it would not shatter, and where to place it at night to cradle the feet of children. Without thermometers, they relied on touch, on intuition. The warmth of their hands measured the pulse of the home. Each movement, each gesture, was a dialogue between body and element. Along the coasts where the wind tore through bone and sail alike, these same stones found another use. The Vikings dug earthen pits, filled them with heated rocks, and covered their food with layers of turf. Hours later, when the soil was lifted, steam and scent rose together. Meat tender, warmth spreading outward. Cooking became an act of preservation, not only of food, but of heat itself. The fire's energy was shared twice, first in the meal, then in the air that surrounded it. Microscopic analysis of ancient hearthstones has revealed something astonishing. A thin layer of carbonized fat and soot coating their surfaces. That layer, formed over years of use, improved the stone's ability to transfer heat. Without knowing it, the Vikings created a hybrid material, mineral infused with organic oil, a naturally enhanced conductor. The science was accidental, but the mastery was deliberate. To them, the fire never truly died. It merely slept inside the stone, waiting to be awakened. A single ember could bring it back to life, as if the rock itself had been dreaming of flame. Imagine the sound of that awakening, the crackle of stone expanding, the hiss of moisture turning to steam, the soft breath of heat filling the room once more. The fire was alive, and the stone, its heart. Because for the Vikings, warmth was not just survival, it was faith. And in those silent, frozen nights, they trusted their stones to breathe when they could not. But how did they carry that same heat within their own bodies, far from the hearth? Chapter 3. The Second Skin. How the Vikings turned wool and fat into science. The northern cold was relentless. It crept into bones, silenced ships, and split wood like glass. But the Vikings didn't just fight it with fire, they wore their heat. Thread by thread, they wove survival into fabric, transforming simple wool and animal fat into one of the earliest systems of portable insulation known to humankind. In the ancient weaving halls of Birka, Oseberg, and Hedeby, archaeologists found twisted wool fibers. Some spun clockwise, others counterclockwise. It seemed decorative, but it wasn't. That alternating twist created tiny air chambers between the threads, trapping warmth against the skin. Each garment became a microclimate, engineered through touch and instinct rather than tools or formulas. This was not fashion. It was field-tested science. The wool itself was unique. The northern sheep carried a double fleece, a soft, fine undercoat, and a coarse, waxy outer layer, rich in lanolin. By spinning both together, Viking women achieved what modern materials scientists now call hydrophobic insulation. The lanolin repelled water while locking in heat, keeping the body warm even when drenched by icy rain or sea spray. In the Dark Age of Europe, they'd already discovered how to make clothing that breathed, resisted, and protected. Archaeological finds from the Oseberg burial mound, preserved in near-perfect condition for over a millennium, show thick woolen cloaks coated in a thin film of animal fat. Chemical analysis reveals traces of tallow and beeswax, deliberately applied to waterproof the fibers. It was a calculated act of chemistry long before chemistry had a name. Each layer of clothing served a purpose. The inner layer absorbed sweat, the middle trapped heat, the outer repelled wind and moisture. Centuries before modern mountaineers spoke of layer systems, the Vikings had already invented one at the edge of the known world. But weaving wasn't merely labor. It was ceremony. Inside the longhouses, groups of women worked by the glow of the central fire, rhythm echoing through the wooden beams. Each strike of the loom was a heartbeat, each twist of thread, a breath. The sound of wool tightening under tension mixed with the crackle of embers and the smell of lanolin and smoke. They weren't just crafting garments, they were building warmth itself, line by line. In that rhythm lay both resilience and identity. A well-made cloak could mean the difference between a living explorer and a frozen corpse at sea. Mothers passed down the knowledge through gesture, not words. How to spin the fibers, when to soak them in grease, how to feel the weight of a thread between damp fingers. It was empirical science transmitted through generations of survival. Even the dyes they used had purpose. Natural pigments made from lichens, moss, and plant roots weren't chosen for color alone. The organic compounds sealed the fibers, enhancing their resistance to moisture. Dark tones absorbed more sunlight during the few hours of winter brightness, amplifying the garment's warmth. Every decision had meaning, nothing was ornamental. On Viking ships, this textile technology became a weapon against death. Sailors wrapped themselves in layered woolen tunics, soaked lightly in lanolin, that allowed them to row for hours in freezing wind without succumbing to hypothermia. Modern experiments with reconstructed Viking clothing have shown the same result. These garments maintain stable body temperature even at sub-zero levels, where cotton or linen would fail. The Vikings didn't carry warmth with them, they became warmth itself. Their second skin was a perfect synthesis of body and environment. The heat their muscles generated was captured by the wool, sealed by fat, and protected by faith in their own craft. Every fiber whispered the same truth. To survive the cold, one must collaborate with it. They didn't conquer nature, they negotiated with it, thread by thread. And when the wind howled across the fjords and frost bloomed on their sails, they stood firm, wrapped in living armor, woven from the breath of sheep and the patience of hands. The fire now walked with them, but could they take that mastery further, beyond clothing and body, to make the very ground beneath them radiate warmth? The answer waited under their feet, buried within the clay of their homes. What secret did the Vikings hide beneath the floor that made the earth itself burn with heat? Chapter 4. The heat beneath their feet. The Viking radiant floor. Fire didn't just light the Viking world, it flowed beneath it. Beneath their feet lay one of the most astonishing forgotten technologies of the early Middle Ages: radiant heat. What modern engineers call thermal mass and convection systems were, for the Vikings, simple acts of survival. an unspoken science built from earth, ash, and fear. Archaeological digs in Jutta, Norway, and Ribe, Denmark, reveal a repeating pattern beneath the ancient hearths, alternating layers of charcoal, stone, and sand, all sealed beneath hardened clay. To the untrained eye, it looked like waste from centuries of fire, but temperature readings and reconstruction tests told another story. The heat didn't rise chaotically. It spread evenly, absorbed by the mineral layers, and released slowly into the ground, turning the soil itself, breathing rhythm. The Vikings had discovered a law of nature without naming it. Heat must flow, not be trapped. So they built cavities beneath their central hearths, narrow tunnels carved into the earth that let hot air circulate before escaping through small vents at the edges of the floor. It was silent, constant, and astonishingly efficient. Long after the last ember faded, the rooms remained warm enough for breath not to frost in the air. In the ruins of Eiríksstaðir, Iceland, archaeologists found blackened flagstones fractured by centuries of expansion and contraction, surrounded by layers of burned turf and ash. This wasn't random. It was evidence of a primitive but effective radiant heating system, one that used local materials to capture the sun's dwindling energy and recycle it through the night. They didn't resist the cold. They tamed it. Inside those longhouses, warmth became architecture. The floors glowed softly under the animal skins, the clay walls radiated faint heat, and the air shimmered with invisible breath. Children and animals slept in the warmest corners, while elders tended the embers that fed the hidden system beneath them. In that underground labyrinth of air and fire, the Vikings turned survival into a kind of alchemy. The sagas remembered it too. They spoke of homes where the earth burned without fire, a phrase once thought poetic, but now understood as literal. To bury heat beneath the house was to domesticate a god, to capture the power of destruction and transform it into protection. The fire, feared and worshipped, was now subdued under clay, breathing in silence. Each home became a sanctuary, a partnership between man, earth, and flame. Modern experimental archaeology has reconstructed these heating systems in Scandinavian museums. After hours of controlled burning, the layered floors retain a stable temperature for nearly an entire day. No electricity, no metalwork, just stone, sand, and intuition. Their homes worked as living engines of heat, proving that the so-called barbarians understood thermodynamics through instinct long before the term existed. This balance between fire, stone, and air defined more than architecture. It defined their worldview. To live in the north was to live in dialogue with the elements, never above them. Their houses weren't shelters. They were breathing organisms, systems of life tuned to the rhythm of the seasons. The Vikings didn't build walls against nature. They built with it, letting warmth circulate like blood through a body. And when night fell and frost pressed its fingers against the walls, the family gathered on the warm floor. They could feel the pulse of the earth beneath them, the quiet exhale of fire hidden in the soil. It was not just heat, it was memory. 1,000 years before central heating, they had already made the land itself an ally. The fire below became their silent companion, rising through the clay with every dawn. Even in the deepest winter, they walked above warmth that refused to die. But what if the final secret of heat lay not beneath their homes, but within their bodies themselves? The Vikings found that answer not in the earth or fire, but in what they ate. Could the human body itself become a forge against the cold? Final chapter. The inner fire. The diet that created heat. The Viking fire did not always burn in the heart. Sometimes it burned within them. After mastering heat in soil, in stone, and in wool, they discovered their final secret: how to create warmth inside the human body. It wasn't sorcery. It was biology disguised as ritual. Modern isotopic studies from Ribe and Trondheim reveal diets dense with marine fat and animal protein: whale, seal, cod, and herring. These oils fueled the body's thermogenesis, allowing the Norse to generate internal warmth even in sub-zero air. They didn't know the science, but they knew the truth. Fat sustained life. It was more than food. It was fire made flesh. In the ancient hearths of Borg and Hedeby, archaeologists have found bones glazed with a film of melted fat, sealing the cracks of pottery and strengthening their vessels. The same substance that fed their bodies also reinforced their homes. Fire, food, and flesh formed one continuous circuit of energy. To the Vikings, heat was not an element. It was a living cycle. The sagas recall feasts where whale fat smoked upward as an offering to the gods. They called warmth hita, the sacred breath that bound people together. A cold house was not one without a flame. It was one where no one shared a meal. To eat together was to keep the spirit of fire alive. During the months of darkness, this philosophy became survival itself. Mothers stored hardened tallow for soups. Warriors carried strips of dried bacon through frozen seas. Children drank thick milk before bed to keep the fire inside. Each act of eating was a ritual against oblivion. Every mouthful was a contract with the flame. Modern science confirms what their instincts already knew. Fat increases metabolism, warmth, and endurance. They had transformed nutrition into engineering. The human body became their final furnace, fueled by discipline, inherited wisdom, and the hunger to endure. When the family gathered around the fire, steam rose from their stews, mingling with laughter and the glow of ember-lit walls. The longhouse itself seemed to breathe, each exhale warm against the howling snow beyond. Inside, life burned steady and golden. The boundaries between body, home, and earth dissolved into one. The fire that once lived beneath their feet now pulsed beneath their skin. And perhaps that was the greatest revelation of all. The Vikings did not fight the cold. They embraced it, learned from it, and reshaped it into knowledge. The earth stored heat, the stones released it, the wool carried it, and the body completed the circle. Their civilization was not built on conquest, it was built on energy and motion. A self-sustaining cycle between life and flame. Centuries later, archaeologists still find evidence of that philosophy. A burnt bone sealed with grease in Hedeby, a blackened stone fractured by breath and time, a floor still radiating warmth beneath a Scandinavian museum. Each one whispers the same truth. Heat was not an accident. It was design. It was memory. To walk through those ruins today is to feel temperature as history. You can almost sense the ghost of warmth rising from the earth, the echo of hands that turned frost into comfort and fear into wisdom. Technology, after all, is born not from abundance, but from necessity. And few people have ever understood necessity like the Vikings did, because they never truly conquered winter. They negotiated with it. They listened, observed, adapted, and turned the cold into culture and survival into art. Their fire was not destruction, it was balance. It was the heartbeat of the living. Even now, beneath the northern ice, their warmth endures, silent, patient, eternal. And if you stand in those ancient ruins long enough, you might still feel it, a trace of heat rising from the soil, a whisper from a people who made warmth a form of knowledge. If you want to uncover more of how the Vikings turned survival into innovation, explore our other documentaries. Stories of exploration, ancestral technology, and human resilience still burning beneath the northern sky. The flame of the north, it simply changed form.